How well does that work for you? How well has it worked for you so far? How many of you have code that you put into production with kind of like your fingers crossed, right? You're kind of pushing the CD across the table to the system administrators, and then as soon as you do, you post your resume someplace? Because you're desperately hoping to find a new job before this code goes into production? Yeah, that's not personal experience. I have a friend who was telling me, yeah, that's not the way I write code. Point is, we've got all of these issues that we have to think about. Security is a huge one, astronomically huge, that we haven't even begun to think about except in terms of, hey, we have a security policy file. How many of you know how to use permissions from the policy file? How many of you say, we'll run it over HTTPS? That makes us secure. Yeah? Yeah, people are like, don't make jokes about that, man. That's too close to home. I don't want to have to think about that security shit. That's just, no. Our code is secure because nobody would ever want to hack our system. It's not like we have credit card numbers or anything like that, right? I mean, we're just dealing with American voting registration. I mean, no security concerns there. There are a ton of issues that are coming up. And fortunately, the language renaissance has already begun. It doesn't take much Googling to find out that people have been working. During that whole time frame, during those 10 or 15 years where we thought objects were it and people could just stop working on languages, the academics were paying no attention to us whatsoever. They were going off and they were thinking about new ideas and trying out new ideas, and lo and behold, when we need them, they're kind of like parents, right? You go through school, you get to a certain age, 18, and then you're like, Mom, Dad, I'm out of here. You people are clueless. I'm leaving. And then you get out into the real world and things are going pretty well, and then all of a sudden something happens, right? Your car breaks down, or you're a little late on the rent and the landlord throws you out, or you lose your job or something, and you call up Mom and Dad and say, Mom, Dad, and they say, it's okay, baby, come on home, we'll take care of you. Right? The academics are Mom and Dad. They're going to rescue us in some ways from the problems that are emerging because these people have nothing better to do but to sit around and think. And it turns out they've been thinking some really interesting thoughts. And so there's all these languages. I mentioned Aspect J. There's Scala. There's Pizza. Do you know there was a language called Pizza? Yeah, because he called it Pizza because pizza and Java, pizza and coffee go together so well. I'm like, dude, no, that's beer. Pizza and beer. We need a beer virtual machine is what we need. It's happening over in the CLR world too. Microsoft's language integrated query, C# 3.0, is this radically fascinating idea about being able to incorporate XML hierarchical data and relational SQL data into the language without having to modify the virtual machine underneath. Very interesting and cool idea. Something that could easily be applied to Java. It's purely semantic sugar. It's purely language magic. There's F#, which is another functional object hybrid language running on top of the CLR, similar in many ways to Scala. There's variations for Scheme and Lisp. And if you want to examine things outside of the JVM or the CLR, there are various languages that run on top of their own platform. Erlang, for example. Haskell is another one. ML, OCaml, all of these different languages. Right? Smalltalk is still around. Squeak is still very popular amongst the open source set. Oops, wrong keyboard. Hey, go. There we go. And it's a heck of a lot easier for you to build your own. As a matter of fact, I contend that given all the various tools, given the willingness to spend a little bit of time doing some research, even if you've never built a compiler before in your life, you can build your own, admittedly fairly simple, but you can build your own language in about a day. In about a day, you can have this language in place and you can start to extend it and grow it and make it interesting in your own way. This is why people are so excited about DSLs and language-oriented programming and so forth, because you don't have to sit down and learn Lex and Yak and have to worry about doing your own optimizations and multi-stage phase optimizing compilers and blah, blah, blah. It's very straightforward to do. But let's be blunt. I mean, at a certain point, you're going to say, okay, yeah, sure, I could build one. It's a calculator. How real is it? I mean, how serious is that? Because let's be very blunt, right? The academics, come on. These are the guys that created things like, Dylan. Yeah, there was a programming language called Dylan. Did you know that? Yeah, it basically did a whole bunch of bad music. Or there was, this was actually, right, this was actually an outgrowth of AppleScript, which was what Apple used as part of the Newton, that incredibly successful handheld platform. How many of you were born when the Newton was available? Just out of curiosity. This was back in like the late 80s, early 90s, handwriting recognition. It was a total terror. I mean, judging by the reaction in here, none of you had ever even heard of it, which pretty much proves my point. I mean, be honest, most languages look like this in terms of their usage curve. Right? Hey, look, I built a language. Oh, it sucks. I'm going to stop using it. If your language is particularly successful, it'll look like this. You'll get like friends and family to use it before they go, "Hun, we gathered all your friends and family here to stage an intervention to tell you your language sucks." There are certain languages, of course, that have done this. They have crossed that threshold of immortality. They will never die, ever, right? Perl being one of those. Despite Perl's best efforts, Perl will still survive. Do you know that, I think it was 6 or 9 months ago, Perl celebrated the 6th anniversary of the announcement of Perl 6. The fact that the language is still being debated, still being defended by the people who use it, is just a testament to the fact that people really love Perl, right? Because you announce that you're going to have the next version of the language, and 6 years later you're celebrating the anniversary of the announcement. We don't actually have the language, but we're still, C++ spent how many years trying to get a language standardization, and people said, okay, it's dead. Ooh. Almost all of the languages that we work with start out in academia at some level. The objects of the world, C++, which begat Java, Java, which begat C#. C++, of course, was based on C and Simula. Another very popular language that's growing in popularity, I should say, is Objective-C, which was another attempt to bring objects to a very popular system language. Objective-C, of course, is what we use to program on the Mac and therefore the iPhone and the iPod, etc. And it turns out that those scenarios, those languages that weren't created by academia, well, they don't have a real great pedigree either. Anybody here ever programmed in Ada? Ada was thought to be the last language you'll ever have to learn, because you know what? The Department of Defense was standardizing on Ada, and if ever you want to make money, U.S. government contracts are it. I mean, you can take 15 years to build Hello World and charge millions of dollars, and my government will pay it. However, if you enter in breach of contract, we will invade you. This is the secret shame, right? It was actually an Iraqi software contracting firm that didn't deliver on the luggage handling system for Denver International Airport. That's why we invaded. The whole WMD thing, that was just a convenient cover. There's some other examples of different languages. I mentioned OCaml, Scheme. There's a language, right? There's a language whose survival has depended on the fact that it's been baked into a text editor. What is Emacs? Emacs is basically a text editor plus a programming language, and it turned into a lifestyle. You can check your mail with Emacs. You can draw pretty pictures with Emacs. You can even find mates with Emacs, because it'll let you go into news groups and find, brides from Eastern Europe. Oh, sorry about that. Anyway, consider this for just a second. This is E for X, ECMAScript for XML. You see this phrase down at the bottom, var total equals order.item.price? That's an XPath query. Do that in DOM. How many pages will it take you? Do that just with one of the XPath APIs that are available to us in Java. How many pages will it take you? And here it is. XML has been baked into the language as a first-class concept. Doesn't that make XML a hell of a lot easier to work with?